just do the final bit. This is the material that I've crushed. There's some very fine sediment in there and some little bits of rocks and so on, which is fine. And I'll just gently sprinkle it on the remainder of the ground. The larger ones put on the base of these slopes, because like any talus slope, the larger rocks will sit at the base of any slope. The finer sediment usually stays towards the top. So just gently sprinkling the material. I'm not too concerned about how many pebbles and rocks. A lot of this will have ground cover and grass in here as well, and it will be covered. And where the road is going to come through here, I'll want a finer stone in here. The road comes through here, so I'll be using just a little bit finer mix, and I'll probably sift it in place with a little strainer. So I'm just shake it like so, and what that does, as you can see by doing that, the coarse material sits here and the real fine dust sits there. So when you shake it like that, it's a way of separating the material. And then I'll just take the coarse material, put it at the bottom of the slope where typically the rocks will migrate to. To get the roadway, I'll take some very fine sand that I've crushed up and gently sprinkle it where the road's going to go. It's nice and fine, and it'll eventually give a very smooth texture to the road. And then just toss the rest, coarse stuff that doesn't go anywhere. And what I'll do then eventually with this is I will, when this is solid with white glue and water, I'll rub the whole thing with a block of wood, and what that will do is it'll crush a lot of this material into fine finish, and add to sort of that muddy look. So just put lots of fine silt in there. Take a spray bottle, just a few drops of detergent in it, and just gently spray, not soak, but do enough spray just to get the moisture through. It's not a thick layer. And then I use some white glue and water and another spray bottle, and it's better than doing with an eye drop. Take forever. So then I just spray that solution on all the pre-wetted areas, just enough that it will penetrate through to the base. And so on. Just go do all the different areas that have been pre-wetted. So to explain the process that I'm going through here, what we want to do is we want to layer the scenery. We want to work from the ground up, not jump too far ahead with trees and shrubs and then come back and try and fit ground, dirt and weeds and so on in. So we've got to think of it from the ground up. It's much easier that way. And so this layering process, as you've seen, starts with the hard shell, then the rock castings, then we color all the rock work, and then we come along and I've applied the gravel and the dirt and so on, and small rocks. And now what we'll do, after we've got that set with white glue and water, and sometimes you can use matte medium. Some people like to use matte medium. I find matte medium works very well, but it's a lot more expensive when you're using a lot of material in a large area like this. Once all this is fairly firm, you can do some touch-ups and details, because you'll find the odd place where the water misting has exposed some of the rock work, so I'd wet it and glue it down again and sprinkle some dirt over it. Once that's set, the next step I'm going to do is again to pre-wet it and sprinkle fine grass ground foam and little larger clumps of ground foam through all these areas, some of it to sort of hide exposed areas of plaster that may not be covered, but you start doing that as a texture, and then we'll build up from there. We'll put some other grasses in and then some larger shrubs, eventually working our way up into the trees, and this will have trees all through here. That way, when you have these little pockets between the trees, between the shrubs, you have these little pockets of detail, and you can see in between. It starts to become very natural. I'll put in underneath the trees a lot of debris and brush, broken limbs, and twigs and so on, just the way it would be on a natural forest floor, and that'll add a lot more character and variety. Now this is the fall, so I'm not going to be using a lot of rich, bright greens. A lot of them are going to be earth tones, ochres, burnt grass, that sort of thing, just to keep it toned down. I sprinkled some burnt grass and so on here. Now I've got a little coarser grass. This is the fine foliage turf, which gives some nice shrubbery texture, just a little coarser grass. And I don't use a sieve. I toss it on and I sprinkle it on so that it just lands randomly and loosely, and it just gives enough texture and interest in some of the key areas, and very sparse. It's almost like sage, just to break up some of the areas of just dirt and rock, and it puts a splash of color on it. Some areas are a little denser. We'll add some shrubs. Where this water runs down here, some areas will be wetter and will attract vegetation a bit more than others, so I might put a little bit more in through here, which accentuates this little valley. Now that I've sprinkled some of the coarser ground foam onto the layout, just very gently spritz it. Now, go too hard, it'll push all the ground foam around, which is okay. It kind of mixes it up a little bit. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But just gently, the fine grass won't move, but the coarse ones will. So you just very gently mist those, and then with the white glue water, just soak the coarser grass, and that'll capillary down through all the fine stuff that we put on earlier, and it'll secure that all in place, just like that. Okay, I've reached a point now where I want to start thinking about the trees I'm going to put in here. So previously I'd painted this mural back here, which is fairly open plains and so on, but really now what I'd like to do, you get a lot of heavy trees and bush in here, and I'm going to have to paint some background in there at the next stage. And so I'm going to have to work from the back forward, and the base of the treed area is going to have a lot of scrub brush. And so what I'm going to use is some of Scenic Express, their sort of flock and turf, looks like ground cover, weeds, twigs, all that kind of thing that would normally be found in the bush, and gives a lot of texture. It'll hide a lot of this, but you do need to have all that in there so that this is not going to cover 100%, but it'll give a lot of ground texture, in the treed area. This is a result now of mixing both the dark underbrush material at first, and then sprinkling over that the lighter one.